George Strait has long been known as the King of Country, a title that isn't just given, it's earned. For more than 4 decades, his voice, his songs, and his unwavering presence on stage have shaped the very soul of country music. But now, shocking news about George has broken across headlines everywhere, leaving fans stunned, heartbroken, and desperate to know the truth. What exactly is happening with George Strait? Is this the end of an era? Or does the legend still have more to give? Today, we uncover the latest updates about George Strait, the stories, the struggles, and the revelations that have the entire country music world holding its breath. George Strait isn't just a performer. He's a living symbol of traditional country music. Born in Texas and raised on the values of family, hard work, and honesty, he carried those principles with him into every song he ever recorded. Unlike many artists who chase trends, George stayed true to his roots. With over 60 #1 hits on the Billboard country charts, he didn't just dominate the genre, he redefined it. Fans admired his consistency, his class, and his rare humility despite his superstar status. But as the years went on, George started stepping back from the spotlight, making fewer appearances and taking fewer tours. And now the latest reports surrounding his health and personal life are sending shockwaves through the music community. The news surrounding George Strait isn't just about his legendary career, it's about his life away from the stage. A life that has been filled with both incredible triumphs and heartbreaking tragedy. Fans often see him as the strong, unshakable cowboy who never lets the world see him stumble. But behind the curtain, George has faced challenges that few could imagine. From the devastating loss of his daughter in the 1980s, which nearly made him step away from music altogether, to the quiet battles that he has never openly spoken about. His life story is one of resilience, grief, and remarkable strength. And now, at 72 years old, the headlines suggest that George may be facing new struggles, ones that bring back memories of those earlier painful moments in his life. Despite these struggles, George has always found a way to pour his emotions into his music. Songs like The Chair, Amarillo by Morning, and I Cross My Heart are more than just hits. They're reflections of a man who knows what it's like to love deeply, to lose painfully, and to hold on to hope when it feels impossible. It's this honesty in his music that has made millions of fans feel connected to him, almost as if he's lived their own stories through his lyrics. That's why the latest reports about George are hitting fans so hard. It isn't just about an artist. It's about a man they've grown up with, a man who has been there in the soundtracks of their lives. And now, the question on everyone's mind is simple but heavy. Is George Strait preparing for the final chapter of his career? Or is there still more left to be written in the story of the King of Country? When news outlets began reporting on George Strait's latest updates, the reactions were immediate and overwhelming. Fans across the globe flooded social media with messages of concern, love, and support. Many wrote about how George's music carried them through the hardest moments of their lives: divorce, loss, heartbreak, while others shared joyful stories of his songs being the soundtrack to their weddings, their road trips, and their best memories. It's rare for an artist to transcend generations the way George Strait has, but his music does more than entertain. It connects people, weaving together stories of love, hope, and resilience. That's why these new headlines have felt like a personal blow to so many. When George hurts, his fans hurt. When George struggles, his fans feel the weight of it too. Over the years, George has made it clear that family is his anchor. His marriage to Norma, his high school sweetheart, has stood the test of time for over 50 years. Through fame, fortune, and heartbreak, Norma has been his constant, the quiet strength behind the King of Country. Those who know George best often say that his devotion to family has always been greater than his devotion to fame, and it's this love that has grounded him in the toughest seasons of life. But as reports surface suggesting George is slowing down even more and focusing on his private world, it raises questions about whether he may soon step away from the stage entirely to devote himself fully to those closest to him. Still, one thing remains certain. George Strait has never been one to leave without giving fans something unforgettable. Even in the moments where he's hinted at retirement, he has always returned with a performance, a show, or a message that reminds everyone why he is and will always be the King of Country. The latest headlines may sound troubling, but for fans, the hope remains that George will continue to share his gift, even if in smaller and quieter ways than before. The country music world has been shaken to its core by the latest about George Strait. Industry insiders, fellow artists, and longtime collaborators have all spoken out, some in whispers and others openly, about just how much George's presence means to the heart of Nashville. Younger stars often credit him as their greatest influence, saying his music showed them what country truly is, raw, honest, and timeless. Without George, many wonder, where does the genre go from here? His absence, even temporarily, leaves a hole that no one else can quite fill. That's why the headlines have not only rattled his fans, but also the entire industry, reminding everyone that even legends are not immune to the struggles of time and life. When George performed what many believed would be his farewell tour back in 2014, fans thought they had seen the last of him on the big stage. But then, like only George could, he returned for select shows and appearances, proving that retirement wasn't going to silence his voice. Yet now, at 72, these reports hint at something different, an end that feels much more final. Unlike before, when he could tease fans with a surprise return, this time the concern is heavier, the question's deeper. Could this truly be the final chapter in the story of George Strait's live performances? And if so, how do fans come to terms with saying goodbye to a man whose songs feel like part of their own lives? Still, even as these heartbreaking questions hang in the air, one truth stands firm. George Strait's legacy is untouchable. His music has stood for more than 4 decades and will stand for many more. No headline, no rumor, and no health battle can erase the impact he has made on country music and on the millions who love him. And perhaps that is the real comfort fans are clinging to right now, that no matter what happens, George Strait will never truly leave. His voice will forever echo in the songs that have become anthems of the human spirit. As the news spread further, fans began sharing their emotions in deeply personal ways. Across online forums, Facebook groups, and fan pages, countless stories surfaced of how George Strait's music wasn't just background noise, it was life itself. One fan recalled how "I Cross My Heart" was the song she danced to at her wedding, while another remembered leaning on Troubadour to help him through the loss of a parent. These weren't just songs, they were lifelines, bridges between memory and emotion. That's why the thought of George stepping away, whether due to health issues or personal choice, feels like losing a trusted friend. For millions, George Strait has been more than an artist. He's been a constant presence through life's joys and sorrows. What makes these updates even more heartbreaking is the timing. George has always kept a low profile, rarely courting the spotlight outside of his performances. Fans admired his quiet dignity, the way he never chased publicity, never made headlines for scandals, and never strayed from his authentic self. So when his name begins trending with troubling news, it feels heavier, more real. For a man who has always lived simply and with grace, these reports strike with a kind of finality that fans are struggling to accept. And yet, amid the grief and fear, there's also gratitude. Many fans are choosing to focus not on what they might be losing, but on what George has already given. Decades of music that will never fade, performances that defined eras, and a legacy that younger generations will continue to discover long after the headlines have faded. While the uncertainty of the present moment is painful, one thing is beyond question. George Strait's story is forever bound to the heart of country music, and nothing can erase that. As the dust settles around the latest headlines about George Strait, one thing becomes clear. This moment marks a turning point. Not just for him, but for all who have followed his journey. The whispers about his health, the speculation about his future, and the worry from millions of fans all come together to paint a picture of a man nearing the sunset of an extraordinary life in music. Yet, if there's anything George has taught us through his songs, it's that endings are never really the end. They're simply another verse in the story of life. George Strait's music has always been about truth. He never dressed it up, never chased trends, never compromised what country music meant to him. And that honesty is what fans will carry with them long after the stage lights dim. Whether it's Amarillo by Morning echoing through a car stereo on a quiet highway, or I Cross My Heart playing at a wedding decades from now, George's voice will continue to live in the most meaningful parts of people's lives. That is a legacy no headline can tarnish. Perhaps that's why this news feels so bittersweet. Yes, there is sadness, worry, and a longing for more time. But there is also immense gratitude for the decades of music, the countless performances, and the steadfast reminder of what true country music sounds like. George Strait may one day take his final bow, but he will never truly leave the hearts of those who grew up with his songs as their soundtrack. And so, as fans wait for more clarity, the message is simple: cherish what we've been given. Because in George Strait, we haven't just witnessed a country artist, we've witnessed history, a living legend whose name will forever be written in the story of American music. Whether he sings another note or not, the King of Country will always reign.